Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another very exciting episode of Backstage Spotlight. Today I'm with the fabulous Gina Murray. Hello there.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. So, Gina, you've done it all. You've done a lot, and you are also from it runs in the family, doesn't it? So, would you like to introduce yourself and kind of say how it started for you?
Yes, of course. I'm Gina Murray. I've always been known as Gina Murray right from birth. My parents were in show business and both changed their names to suit the stage and screen. And so when they named my sister and I, they did that with that in mind. So we didn't have to. So I've always kept the same name. And dad was a songwriter, wrote many, many hits in the 60s and 70s for Jerry and the Pacemakers and big bands like that, and working with the Beatles and so on. And my mum was a stage and screen and recording artist called Gina Frame. She's very much still with us and has been an amazing inspiration the whole way through. And my sister, of course, is Maz Murray playing Donna in Mamma Mia in the West End at the moment. And we've grown up, all singing, all dancing, and now my boys are both following me into the industry as well.
Wow. So it really is running in the family and still continuing by the sounds of it, which is great.
Very much so, I'm afraid. Yes.
So, how has the industry changed from when you were younger to now? Have you noticed a difference?
Definitely, it is a completely different landscape. Some positive changes and some not so positive, in my opinion. For example, I think it's great that we're now seeing a lot more diversity across casts, crews. There are doubtless more opportunities, certainly for women, than there ever were. And I didn't really realize that when I was just entering into the industry. It was a much smaller pool when my mum was also in the industry. And so it kind of gave you a false idea of the availability of work and so on, because there were just fewer people. And now, of course, there are many, many more. And the advent of reality TV and then the internet has changed things beyond all recognition. Socials, all of those things have impacted it. And I think it can have some positive effects. It means that, training is still brilliant, but it's not the only way to do things. There are many different ways to enter this industry. I think the standard of performers is generally way higher than it was when I was starting out. The people I'm working alongside are definitely ability wise more gifted, probably, but I think perhaps not as resilient. And that's a combination of things we've all been through worldwide, like pandemics and strikes and so on. And the advent of mental health taking a front seat in things, which just wasn't the case when I first started. And so there are swings and roundabouts with that, I think. So I think that training has become, in most places, kinder, in inverted commas, which is a good thing. On the other hand, once you enter this industry, you realize that it is just as tough, if not more so. It's just maybe dressed up not to be, whereas it never was. It was shamelessly rough and tough. And unless you could cope with that and be resilient, you would fall. And I think we're suffering a little bit because people are coming out of training, grads, and so on, with this illusion that it's going to be a kinder landscape. And I'm afraid I don't think it is. And so, therefore, you either bounce back fast or you'll have to leave. That, I think, is the reality, if I'm going to be honest about it. It's just as cutthroat and ruthless as it ever was. But that in mind, there are lots of of positives, like I said, about the availability of roles and this enormous talent that's coming out. And the pool of people is much bigger.
Sure.
But the wages, I mean, since I started, let's put it this way, inflation seems to affect the ticket prices, not so much the wages,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And yet there's this incredible disparity between what a star will get paid and what an ensemble member might get paid. And that's 'twas ever thus, I suppose, but people need to be aware of that as a business.
Yes, yes. So, talking about the different pathways that someone can take to get into the industry, how important do you think training professionally is nowadays?
Um, I think that good training and respected training is always a bonus. My eldest son is at Bowden's College. I can't rate them highly enough.
Wow.
Um, there are a lot of places that offer fantastic training. But I will say again with the caveat of um, if it's tough, then I think it's going to be helpful for you. Within reason, of course. We don't want bullying, but I think there's still some amazing training out there. Do I think it's the only route to success? No,
Yeah.
no. And I wouldn't necessarily advocate it in every case. I think sometimes grads are coming out in their 20s and they've been perhaps usurped by teenagers who are available when they're not. And so, it's like you can argue for both sides. I think you have to, as a performer and an artist, answer your gut. If you need the confidence that builds and the resilience that builds with training, then go for it. If you think, actually, I feel ready confidence wise, I'm just going to chance my arm, the industry will teach you those things anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So, for those graduates, people just coming out of college, stepping into the industry for the first time, what's some advice you can give about building that network when you first come out of college, how to get in audition rooms?
$1 million question, Matilda, you know? And there isn't just one route. I think you, as the artist, have to be aware that you are also running your own business.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you cannot wait for things to arrive and fall in your lap. It just doesn't work like that, not very often. You have to push for that to happen, but without being pushy. And that's a tough balance to strike. So I think I'd recommend making as many connections as you can, with socials, of course, but also real life. Go and see work, go and see shows, make sure that you're aware of what's happening, try to meet people that are influential, go to places they hang out, media clubs, for example. And these things are not cheap to do always. But also, I think, bear in mind that people are very switched on to takers that only take. You need to put yourself forward to learn, to be available, to do things as favors, when you're starting out, to build your network, learn what you can learn about lighting, about direction, about sound, if you can, pal up with people that know stuff and put yourself forward to shadow or to do work experience in as many areas as you can if you are not currently working, because that all helps
Yeah.
with your knowledge of the industry in general and will be worth way more than you think further down the line.
Yeah, very, very valuable information. So you have recently done work, for example, hosting the What's on Stage Awards with the classic double act, Gina and Maz Murray. It was fantastic. And I want to know how you enjoy doing that work compared to classic stage work. What's the difference between hosting and that?
Oh, firstly, thank you. Thanks so much. It was the best fun. And to work with my sister Maz is always the best fun and the top choice. And we don't get to do it a lot. because we're sisters, we don't get cast alongside very often. And so this was an amazing way to work together. The difference, well, for a start, we were allowed, thanks to What's on Stage Awards, to write the whole thing pretty much. Damien Sands and Alex Parker allowed us way more free reign than they probably should have. And I remember saying to them, "Shall I send you our script, a few days in advance?" And they said, "No, don't worry about it." What? What if I get it wrong? Anyway, it was an amazing thing to be a part of, and it's quite a unique experience to be in front of the entire industry.
Yeah.
It takes the same amount of um, control and focus that performance does, but you have to be much more ready to think on your feet. For example, I mean, we don't know who's going to win. We don't know how long they're going to speak for. We don't know which side they're going to come on from, what they're going to say. And so you have to be ready to roll with that and really good at those situations. And that is something that my sister and I really thrive on. We really enjoy that mild panic. But it's great fun. So we were editing in the wings as we go and on stage. She was dressed up as Elphaba from the movie, and I was Glinda, and we realized that she couldn't see a thing. Because she had a green stocking over her face, and she said, "Gina, I can't read what's on the cue card." So we were we were making changes, on the hop. She was making me laugh. I was making her laugh. It was such a fabulous evening. I loved it, every second of it.
You could really tell that you just have a great bond as sisters. And I'm just wondering how it is because I've got a sister myself who is just going through training and I've graduated. What's it like growing up with a sister in the industry?
It's the most fabulous thing you can imagine, and you'll know this. I feel so fortunate because you've got a pal and a gang member
Oh,
immediately, and you've got a support system. And of course, there are moments, and there have been in our lives and our careers, which have been tricky because we might be up for the same audition or the same role. But ultimately, we've always said, well, better a Murray gets it than doesn't.
yeah.
It's a win for whoever. And also, we're pretty different in our way, although people do get us mixed up, which I can't understand because we are so not, not really alike. But um, when it comes down to a role, they'll either go a Maz route or a Gina route. Um, and I think that once you've got years of experience behind you, you can see those things as the bonus that they really are, even if you don't automatically see that earlier on. I mean, we always were like that because there's only a year between us. And so all the way through training, at Redroof's Theatre School, we were together. And then we went separate ways when Maz went to Sylvia Young's and I remained in education. And I do think it's important for siblings to have their own identity. And my boys, Joe and Max, they are very, very different in their look and in what they want to do. And that's important. I think you need to build confidence outside of your sibling relationship in order for that sibling relationship to work to its best advantage. And that's why I think we enjoy working together so much, because we're solid as individuals as well, in the knowledge. And you must relate to that, I'm sure, that there'll be things that you can do really, really well that maybe your sister isn't quite as good at, but she has other strings to her bow. It's really important. And the same goes for your best mates in the industry. You can be each other's best, best, best support, and it will get tricky when you are up for the same roles. And you
Exactly.
have to learn to navigate that, and for it not to crush you, but for it to strengthen you. That's the key.
That's great, definitely. So when you are performing in a show and it's got to that point where you're doing 8 shows a week and it may feel repetitive, how do you carry on so that you don't lose that spark and the performances still remain fresh?
Well, I think in my case and my sister's case, our training was old school, and we were very much taught the show must go on. It's in our bones and in our blood, and we love it so much. I think if you have that work ethic, that professionalism, and the respect for the work, um, that will get you through. And I think everybody gets bored. Of course, it's the same show, but it ought to be fresh every day and every show that you do. And absolutely every time I perform, I remind myself how lucky I am to do this for a living, that someone is paying me, and that the audience are paying the same amount as they did on opening night as they are this Thursday matinee 8 months into a run. And I remember going to see shows, and I remind myself of this as a child, which helped me when I was starting out to dream build. And those experiences can be life changing. You can do a performance and it really resonates with someone for reasons that you'll never know. And they may never be able to tell you. But I know from going to see performances that they've changed me. And so that's never going to happen if you watch somebody phoning it in. I think it's unforgivable. I think if you can't get past that and at least fake it, which we have to do a few times, fake it till you make it, then it's not for you, because that is the industry and you have to act it. Even if you're on screen, by the way, and you are, and Tom Cruise is doing Mission Impossible, for example. Yes, he's only going to do those scenes a number of times and move on to the next scene and then the next movie. However, in the interim, he's going to do 100 interviews answering the same questions he always gets asked. And it must appear fresh. And you must remember how fortunate and how impactful that can be for your audience, for the person watching.
Oh, that's great. So along the same lines as, keeping things fresh, keeping that spark, there's also the side of maintaining your health, your vocal health, your physical health. Performers can hit burnout quite quickly, and it's important that you know your body to be able to manage that. How do you personally navigate that?
That's a really good question, because when I was training and in my 20s, I absolutely took it for granted. I think that the voice that you have in those years might not be the voice that grows old with you, and you might have to then start respecting it a little bit more. So it's a good idea to respect it from the get-go. And I own up that I didn't. I mean, I never warmed up, really. Did a few sirens, belted on the stairs, warm. And you can get away with that sometimes and think, gosh, this is easy. I don't know why people bother. And then suddenly, it will not do what it always does. And you realize, I need to start looking after it. So I think nowadays I treat it with a lot more respect, and I would advise people to do so. I think nebulizers are an important step forward and an advancement. I didn't know what one of those was until, a few years back. They're brilliant. Steam your cords, look after them. But I think I've always known, thanks to my training at June Rose's school, and thanks to my mum being in the industry, I've always known that you can't go out and socialize, go mad and party, and then do 2 shows of an amazing quality the next day. Always. Yeah. You might get lucky, most likely not. And you have to respect that. Your body, your mind, your vocals.
Yeah.
Take it seriously.
For sure. So what do you do before a show? Do you have any pre-show rituals that you kind of don't go on stage without having done?
Yes, but I keep them to a minimum. And I remember starting out laughing at older actors quietly, obviously, not not very obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have many friends. But I remember going, they're going through their lines or they're doing whatever. Now I am that person. And I don't necessarily think it's a great idea to run all your scenes in your head beforehand, but I always have a cheat sheet, always, of a shortcut version of my show. I always make sure I have peace, calm in my room. The half is, for me, is very important. Don't come in or, and unsettle me. We can have chats and sure, but if there's like a high stress situation or a row, anything, no. I
Yeah.
like nice and quiet and calm if possible, because I'm about to work, and I need to get my head around that. I also think it's an amazing note that my stepfather Rob gave me once about bring energy onto stage. That doesn't mean shout louder and be faster. It means energy. So I wrap myself in a little virtual energy. Takes 4 seconds of my time before I go on, a moment, shut my eyes, wrap myself in, like, whatever you want to visualize, an aura, an energy, whatever, protection, fire, strength, imagining all the words and all the music dropping into my soul, into my head. I can do this, and out I go. And it makes, I think, a big difference. I like to think.
I love that. I absolutely love. Um, so is there any ever has there ever been any like funny moments, mishaps from your onstage work that you've done, and how did you cover it up if you did?
No, I'm flawless. I've never made a mistake in my entire career. I mean, wow, there's mistakes and errors all the time. Everyone, please remember that they're the gift. They're not, it's not something that you need to be ashamed of. You can't avoid it, and it will teach you way more than getting it right. And yes, I have had very many funny moments. In Hairspray, I was tipped upside down and had to belt my song out every night. I mean, you can only imagine the things that go wrong, you know, and there are wigs on back to front, and there are, in all sorts of shows, and all the way through my teens, my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and beyond, I'm still learning. And the only way to learn is, oh, yeah, I need to just check everything before I go on. I need to set my props because it wasn't there. And I've just done an entire scene about this prop and it's not in my hand, for example. There are, I mean, like I said, with the What's on Stage Awards, you can prep all you like, but it won't really help you.
Yeah,
And that's something to be embraced. It's a skill, it's improv, and it's so much fun. And I kind of love it. If a little thing goes wrong, I think the key is always to keep the audience as part of that joke and never have the joke be on them.
yeah, that's so true for sure.
Either they know about what's going on and you include them, or you make sure they don't know at all.
Yeah, yeah, great advice. So, lastly, before we wrap this episode up, if you could go back and tell your younger self, so bearing in mind that like young people are listening to this podcast,
Mm.
hoping to go into the industry, what's something you would have told yourself, maybe like a nugget of knowledge or a one-liner that you that resounds with you quite deeply now?
I always say to grads, students, people starting out, the most important thing is resilience. Yes, work hard. Yes, be talented. Add to your skills set. That's really important. Do as many things as you can, because now with AI, with socials, there are many more jobs that we might lose out on, but there are also many more coming, and you have to be ahead of that curve. You have to think of yourself as a brand and as a company and as a business entity, as well as a performer and a person. But be strong. Build that image for yourself so that Gina Murray, the person, Matilda, the person, doesn't get injured so much. It's a business, and you need to remember that when they say, "I'm sorry, you weren't good enough, you weren't tall enough, you weren't short enough," whatever it is, you use that Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. Get stronger, learn from it. Don't get angry, don't get sad for too long. You're allowed to bounce down as long as you bounce back stronger, better.
Wow.
That's the key to longevity.
Yeah, what powerful advice. Thank you so much for that. And which brings us to a lovely, lovely close for our podcast. So thank you so much for joining me, Gina, and everybody
Ah, thank
listening.
you.
I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next week. Take care and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You too. And good luck, everybody out there. It's the best industry. Just make sure it loves you back as much as you love it.
Definitely. Goodbye.